Welcome to Amy Kardashian and the Expert Show, where the experts share their knowledge, experience to help you transform your business and personal life. This show is about real-world education and beyond. I am your host, Amy Kardashian, not Kardashian. This episode is sponsored by akexpertstv.com and youwillchangetheworld.com. And today's segments we are going to talk about how to know if your child will end up in the pipeline. If you have kids or grandkids that they're still in the school, you might want to really pay attention to this segment. I have three powerful ladies here in the studio. They are going to share their knowledge and wisdom to help you, educate you, and let you know what's going on and how you could protect your family. So welcome to my guest.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's nice having you. So Dr. Susan Finnick is the one who invited Bonita Faye and attorney Susan Rasky. And it's a great energy with you guys because I know you now for a while, and we've talked about this. This subject is very deep, and I'm so blessed to have you here with us. Each one of you have a totally different experience, and we are going to dig deep into the subject and share with people what they need to know. So I would like to ask the first question. First of all, please introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Susan Fennick. I was a child psychologist in the Department of Forensic Mental Health for approximately 8 years. I'm also an international speaker, an advocate, and an instructor on You Will Change the World.
Okay, that's
Bonita Faye. I am a mentor, advocate, community change agent, and also an international speaker, published author of Guilty, the Inside Truth.
I'm Susan Rasky. I recently retired from the Clark County Public Defender's Office after almost 35 years. Most of that time, almost 30 years of that time, was spent in the juvenile division where I supervised attorneys representing children in juvenile court. I'm also on the National Advisory Board for the National Juvenile Defender Center, which is a nonprofit organization that looks to provide excellency in juvenile delinquency defense and provides training and expertise all across the country to juvenile defenders to improve the advocacy of juvenile defense work in this country.
Okay, great. Well, before we dig deep into the subject, I would like to take a minute to say happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I hope next year you will have your best year ever. So we're coming back now to the subject, and I want to ask you why children are getting into the juvenile system. What's going on? How they get even there, and what families they need to know about?
I think for me, it really starts with legislation and the laws that are created, and also with our politicians when they forecast how many prisons they should build. They really start looking at our children in the 3rd grade and projecting how many of them will end up in the prison system.
So they already know what's going on and they're calculating.
Yes, they're calculating and they're predicting how many prisons they will need.
Wow.
At a very young age.
And a very, very young age.
Yes.
And you know, my experience working in juvenile justice for so many years, anecdotally, I was surprised to find that our caseloads would drop during the summer, and you'd kind of think that kids would get in more trouble during the summer when they have more time on their hands and maybe less supervision. But I soon found out the reason why is because the biggest referral source for our Clark County juvenile justice system is the school district police.
Wow.
Yes. So across the country, this is a huge problem of children being referred from school into juvenile justice. Some schools in the country have school resource officers, but we actually have a police department here in Clark County. It's the Clark County School District Police Department. And so, we have officers providing police services in our schools. So, you know, in instances where you might expect maybe there could have been some mediation or diversion for some activity that might rise to a delinquent act, but maybe could have been handled informally, children are getting arrested and taken down to juvenile hall and being processed. And so over the past couple of decades, we've seen nationwide a real militarization of our police departments, and that's true too as well in our school district police. And so we're seeing more kids getting arrested when there are so many different opportunities to divert them from the system. And once they're in the system, they're processed through the system.
So what you're saying, sometimes a child is not doing something really horrific for them to go to that system, but we're throwing every child does something wrong in that system.
For example, repeatedly when I was watching the statistics of what charges our department was mostly seeing the most of, almost every month it was battery. Battery is a minor misdemeanor, kids fighting, maybe hitting each other. That's the most frequent charge we see actually coming through our public defender's office. So, you know, kids getting in a fight, they get arrested. Rather than calling the parents, talking to them, having mediation, and letting them learn from the experience. Because I think most of us know as parents that a little delinquency is normal. I mean, I know looking back at my childhood, there was delinquency. Maybe I never got arrested, but delinquency is very normal.
Just being a child.
Yeah,
I mean,
and children grow out of
rights.
it. You know, you mature and you grow out of it. But if you interrupt the natural maturation process, putting kids in detention, putting them into correctional facilities, that stunts that maturation process and affects them actually naturally maturing out of this immature, maybe delinquent behavior.
It affects their cognitive growth, it affects their self-esteem, it affects how they're going to portray themselves, it affects how they're going to even portray their future. And I mean, I think that, you know, we have so many officers that are in the schools, and we have to keep in mind that badge does not equal honor, because a lot of the times the schools might think that they might have someone who's trained, but really they're not really trained to really understand that if they're going to throw a child into, the only solution is to throw a child into a secure facility, does that officer with a badge really understand the lifelong ramifications of the child, of the family, of the court system, and how it's going to affect their lives forever?
And we also have to keep in mind too that varies by neighborhood, depending on where the schools are located. So for
Zip
example,
codes.
exactly, some inner city youth are more frequently charged with criminal offenses. And so we are really disrupting that youth's future potential to grow and to learn from that situation.
So their self-esteem right away, there is no hope for them to even say, well, I am going to excel in this life or continue my education. So when we come back, we're going to go deeper on this, because this just scares me. I have grandkids, and I will not like it if my grandson or my granddaughter had some fight at school, and just because they're fighting with a kid, is going to end up being with other children who is really doing things are not right, and then maybe they learn something from them, and their self-esteem, they're just surrounding that.
Yeah.
So when we come back, we're going to talk more about this and what is the solution about it. So we'll be right back. We are back, and we were talking about how to know if your child will end up in the pipeline. And this subject is very deep to anyone who have children or grandkids still at school. So you told me something, it's very disturbing to me, because like I said, I have grandkids. If my grandson or granddaughter have a problem at school, and they're going to end up being in the system where they could have someone really bad. I mean, how that works, I don't know. But I want to know more about what what made you want to defend that? What did you see?
I think for me, what I saw, being a former ex-offender and returning citizen, to me it was a culture shock to really see that I was locked up with juveniles as young as 12 years old.
In
So
an
you
adult
were
facility.
actually
In an adult
you were
facility.
actually locked up
Correct.
with younger, with older or younger?
With younger youth. The youngest one was 12. They were in there because they had a fight, and they ended up being charged as adults because while they were in the juvenile facility, they continued to have fights. And so they eventually ended up charging them as an adult. And what that really resulted in was them being placed in a secure prison facility with someone like me, and them having to adapt survivor skills that they weren't necessarily ready for. They learned from people who were older than them, who had more experience than them. And so sometimes that meant an alternate lifestyle. That meant learning to be a better criminal. You know, that meant that their focus was not on school. And so they really latched on to adults who already were seasoned in this lifestyle. And so my eye-opener was one day a youth said to me, I know your daughter.
Wow.
And I said, you do? And she said, yes, I went to school with her. And so I called my daughter and I said, do you know your friend is in here because they had a fight on the bus? And they're in the bunk next to me. And so my daughter was like, no, is that what happened to her? And I said, yes. So you might not need to fight at school anymore on the bus because this is where you could end up. And so to me, that was a huge eye-opener.
I mean, I am about discipline the kids and let them be respectful at the bus. They need to do that. But not taking them to a place where it's just really going to teach them the wrong thing or have other adults maybe be influenced.
Or take advantage of them.
Or take advantage
because they're
of them.
not ready for the situations that they are placed in adult institutions.
So here what we're saying is not about not disciplining the children. It's about how to discipline the children. Is that correct?
Correct.
Exactly.
Is that what you're defending?
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, the reason I became so passionate about this subject is just all the years I spent representing kids that are being taken away from their home, put in out-of-home placements, that are being put in correctional placements, being sent to the adult system.
Yes.
It's heartbreaking because you know that the children that are being detained are more likely to be receiving formal charges. The ones receiving more formal charges are more likely to be adjudicated delinquent. The ones that are adjudicated delinquent are more likely to be in a correctional placement. And the ones that go into correctional placement are more likely to reoffend and end up in the adult system. I mean, the statistics bear this out. And we know that the statistics are against them.
Okay.
And during my work, I had the great fortune to be able to be on some policy committees, statewide policy committees, be involved with legislation to change for the better, in my opinion, some legislation, which is so rewarding to be able to curb back, be a part of curbing back the number of kids that are going to be subject to being sent to the adult system, or being a part of the change in the law so that children in the adult system will be eligible for earlier parole. This has been so rewarding for me with my work nationwide to see the issues that are going around the country and be able to advocate those issues as they affect kids in my home state here in Clark County.
Well, because you're protecting the kids. Okay.
And to speak to what Susan is saying, we've seen a change in laws across the country where youth who were sentenced to life or extended sentences are now being able to go before the board or to request that their sentences are reduced, because what we know for the youth is that their brain is not fully developed and we're giving them lifelong punishments. And so we are really, really setting them up for failure. And due to the changes in the law, such as what Susan advocates for, we are now seeing youth to be released much earlier. The United States is really the only country that gives youth life sentences.
So what we're saying again is it's not to discipline the kids, but it's to what extent and what they're doing and study. we need to be more fragile with them. Like they're fragile, we need to be more careful with them. But the best person could talk about this is Dr. Susan, because you're a psychologist, Phoenix. Sorry, Dr. Phoenix. So
I think that I graduated in the year 2000, and I knew on my second day that there was a problem. I just knew it. I can feel it. Like when you walk into someone's home, you feel welcome, or you feel this, unwelcoming feeling. And I knew on the second day something was wrong. And when you work in a place where there's a corkboard full of obituaries of, youth that you have been advocating for, that you've been working with, that are dead. Either maybe they've been shot and killed in a gang, or maybe they've just committed suicide, or the circumstances are very long, as we all know. And, Susan has advocated for indiscriminate shackling. I'll never forget this one time, Jillian was coming from the secure facility down to the courtroom where they have them, hold them in like a fishbowl.
so you feel obligated to
More
help
than
the children.
obligated. I mean, just having worked with youth that, the amount of youth that are thinking about suicide, that are committing suicide, that, this little boy who told me he just couldn't take it anymore, and all the kids were showing themselves how to hang each other from these vents, and no one took the vents out, and sure enough, he hung himself in between shifts, and of course the safety tape went missing, and it's just left such a
Scar in your
such
heart.
an impression on me that I just felt like
It's your thing to fight for.
my
Yeah.
thing to advocate for.
Okay, so now we talked about the problem, what's going on, and when we come back, we are going to share with everyone what they can do and what is the solution for this. How could we educate ourselves and where we need to go to do that? So we will be right back.
Thank you for calling Denim Revival.
Hate to say goodbye to your favorite jeans? Well, now you don't have to, because Denim Revival is here for you. Mail us your jeans and our professionals will fix it right up. We offer you all kinds of alteration services, including invisible repairs, let-outs, taperings, and original hemming, or even have your own custom-made jeans. Quoted the best denim repair shop by GQ, Vogue Magazine, and LA Times. Denim Revival, your search for alteration and repair ends here.
And to you it ain't pretty little thing, howdy your baby.
We are back and we're talking about how to know if your child will end up in a pipeline, and these stories that I'm hearing right now, and it's amazing. I really encourage you to pay attention to what's going on to protect your family. So welcome back. This is a very deep subject, and just broke my heart. We were talking about the child who hanged themselves because they couldn't deal with where they were and what's going on. So please continue tell that story.
This was a boy who was in for a probation violation, and a probation violation could be anything from coming in late for a curfew, it could be use of a substance, it could be a myriad of a lot of things. And I just remember him, the kids were all showing each other how to stand up on these sinks and hang themselves through these vents. And I raced through all of the buildings, and I said that they had to remove these vents, and if they don't, I will try to do it myself. And I just remember him sitting in this little cell in an oversized jumpsuit, rolled up, and he was just like, I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. I mean, Susan and Benita can speak also on the fact of the traumatizing effects that happens with these little children in these cells, and seeing all this razor wires and all this cement, and being literally chain ganged and shackled and brought across even a grass lawn in chains and what are those
Billy chains.
Billy chains and everything, is traumatizing. And, you know, the kids were all showing each other how to stand up on these sinks and hang themselves through these vents. And I just remember him sitting in this little cell in an oversized jumpsuit, rolled up, and he was just like, I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. I mean, Susan and Benita can speak also on the fact of the traumatizing effects that happens with these little children in these cells, and being literally chain ganged and shackled and even a grass lawn in chains and what are those they never took the vents out, and he hung himself and died.
Wow.
And
You know, many of these kids have suffered trauma. I mean, some of these
post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yes.
trauma. I mean,
Exactly.
these kids come from neighborhoods where their whole life is trauma sometimes. And then to arrest them and take them away from their home, put them in a cell, and you have to understand the cell is a cement room with a cement bed with a tiny little pad for a mattress on a cement bed.
Yes.
And with a toilet sink combination, no windows in these rooms that are they're locked in.
And what age we're talking about?
Well,
From what age to what
I
age
have
that we're talking
here
about?
in Clark County, I have represented children as young as 8.
As young as 8,
As young
they
as
could put them
8.
in
8
that
to
bed.
17.
Yeah, 17, and we get kids that age out into 18, 19 that are still involved in the juvenile
And then
system.
they go into the adult system. And
But as you know, our law in Nevada changed recently, so there's only a few type of crimes now that 8 and 9-year-olds can be arrested for. So the majority of offenses start at 10 now in Clark County, but there's still, for some offenses, 8 and 9-year-olds can be charged in juvenile court.
What is surprising is for something simple, you could be in the same place. That's where I'm concerned about that many families, they don't know this. I mean, I wouldn't even imagine if a child just fighting in a classroom
I
with
think
someone,
for
they
me,
can go
yeah.
there.
I think for me, Amy, you know, to speak to what Susan just said, you know, these children, a lot of them, especially from the inner city, are suffering from PTSD that is never diagnosed and never treated. They're walking home past dead bodies. They hear and see shootings. They are witnessing domestic
Gangs.
violence in their homes. Gangs, like Susan said, and we never stop to even direct them towards treatment to deal with the PTSD. And so to me, that is setting them up for failure in the system. And sometimes people don't even realize that they are suffering from PTSD.
Many children may be exhibiting behavior problems in school as a result of this
Yes.
PTSD. And because they're exhibiting behavior problems, it's sometimes easier for the school to say, oh, take them to juvenile justice. That's one less problem in my
That I have to
in my
deal
crowded
with.
classroom,
Exactly.
rather than having services available in the school to address why is this child acting out and how can we as a community address that to improve this, to avoid going into juvenile justice.
so, for example, if each school had, as we've discussed before, a trained psychologist, a trained child psychologist, trained therapists, trained advocates, trained counselors, but they don't always have those.
But
No.
even grief counseling, they need grief counseling to deal with some of the things that they're witnessing because they become desensitized.
Okay, so when we come back, we're gonna go on another short break. And when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about the stuff because it's just really, really educational. And we are going to give some solutions. How's that sound?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll
Sounds
be
good.
right back. Welcome back, and we are talking about how to know if your child is next in the pipeline. So this has been really, really a great show. I'm very passionate about learning about this stuff, and I'm sure all the viewers are really learning from you. It's not enjoyable because this is something surprising to know that there is 13 years old was in the same cell jail that you were in.
Exactly.
And also knowing that a child, he killed himself because he couldn't handle the pressure of being in jail, and knowing 8 years old, she was, you know, in that cell where you can't even move and sit. So now I know why you're passionate about, and they know that, and they know that children sometimes innocent, not innocent, but they're being children fighting a little bit, and they end up being there. Now I want to know what the cost of this, and why are we putting the money in a jail instead of putting it into educational and helping our generation.
Well, Senator Cory Booker puts it nicely. I mean, it's a $21 billion deficit, and it's consuming our taxpayer dollars. And it's just a cyclical, non-ending sieve, basically, of our money in this country. But I guess this is the best we can do, because if we can do any better, wouldn't we be spending less? So we can talk more about how maybe it's a for-profit system and how much the facilities make on the youth, and how many times have I been told, if the beds aren't filled, we don't get paid. So say, for example, you have a facility, and let's just say for the sake of the conversation, there's 50 beds, and there's only 20 beds filled. So we're gonna have to over-medicate, over-violate to keep those filled so they get paid.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about medication, are they giving the children medication without telling the parents, or they have to take permission? How that works?
They could come into, say if a youth gets charged with any crime, they can come into a facility. Let's just say Jillian, she comes in. She's in the wrong place at the wrong time, she's in the wrong hallway. The whole crowd winds up in a facility. And so now she sits down with a child psychologist or whoever it might be that is now going to be writing prescriptions. And she says, I want to kill myself. I can't be here anymore. Obviously, someone who's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 doesn't understand probably a high percentage, the ramifications of what they even said. Oh, suicidal, okay, severe depression, suicidal ideation, and so on and so on and so on. So here's your 5 to 9 psychotropic medications. So you're on Paxil, Tegretol, Depakote, Zoloft, lithium, whatever it might be. So now because of what you said about how you're feeling, that you're in this razor wire cement toilet combination, now they're depressed or suicidal.
They're on medication.
Right, and the parents are on the outside. They're part of that system, and that system now owns them. And if they don't take those medications, then they get in more trouble.
But the parents, they need to know. They know before the child take medication, right?
Not
Or
always.
Not necessarily.
Not always.
Really?
No.
So without the permission of the parents, the psychologist can give the medication?
Through a court order, yes.
Through a court
Through a
order,
court
yes.
order.
A mandated court order, yes.
The parents, once your child enters the system, they're really not your child anymore.
They have the ownership.
Right. The system has the ownership and can make decisions that they deem are in the child's best interest. When you asked about the cost, to me, the cost is more the destruction of our families. And so when our children enters the system, our families are being torn apart, and this becomes a generational issue. So the parents may be incarcerated, their kids are incarcerated, the fathers are out of the homes. We have laws that prevent them from returning back to the homes. And so we create one crisis after another. We're not really being solution focused. Really what we're doing is tearing apart families.
Absolutely. No, there's no doubt about it.
You know, my focus is looking at in Nevada institutions. We don't have many correction, or at this point, I'm not aware of any correctional non-state institutions in Nevada. But talking to colleagues around the country, this is a huge problem where we have for-profit companies running correctional institutions.
Yes.
Not only juvenile facilities, but adult facilities as well. And when there's profit, that's a problem.
Keeping the beds filled.
Yes, you keep the beds filled because that's how much the government is paying these corporations, our tax dollars, to pay for these beds that are filled. So there's motivation to keep the beds filled for the corporate people that are profiting. So my question is, how many judges own stock in, say, the CCA, the Correctional Corporation of America, which is a private company that's for profit, that runs many prisons and immigration facilities in this country? And is that judge profiting if that judge owns stock in that corporation. Is that judge motivated to impose a longer sentence because that judge has a financial interest?
Of course.
And not only
You know,
that,
I just want to say that for us as Americans to be profiting off of prisoners, in my opinion, is immoral, and it's got to end.
and they're not the only ones profiting, Amy. We also have the pharmaceutical companies who profit off of the inmates being prescribed the prescriptions. We have the telephone companies that handle the collect calls that our families have to make home. We even have private corporations that utilize inmate labor, such as Walmart, Victoria's Secret, M&I, Wells Fargo. Even the federal government utilizes inmate labor to actually build the protective gear that the Army needs while they're defending our country. And so this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is completely motivated by money. There is no incentive to dismantle the system.
And you know, since the 1990s, when we've had the mandatory minimum sentencing, the Truth in Crime Act, the 3 strikes rules, we've seen a skyrocket in our prison population. At the same time, we're seeing private corporations running these prisons, profiting from the labor in these prisons. So it is a huge moneymaker, so there's little incentive to dismantle it.
There is. They utilize inmate labor. A lot of these corporations, they have contracts with the state, and they hire inmates anywhere from 25 cents an hour to $2 an hour to perform work while they're incarcerated. And so this really, really becomes another form of slavery.
And however, when
So-
they get out,
Yeah.
they can't get the jobs.
They cannot. And so when they get out, they can't get the jobs, although they already have a trained workforce. They have somebody who's skilled and somebody who has showed up to work every day. But once they get out, the application asks the question, are you a felon? Oh, you can't pass our background check, but you have utilized me while I was incarcerated and made a profit off of me. So my question
Because
then
I was
becomes-
cheap labor.
Because I was cheap labor.
Okay.
So my question then becomes, okay, you utilized me while I was incarcerated, but don't they now owe a debt to our society to reduce recidivism and to give some of these inmates employment?
Well, yeah, so they don't go back, but they want them back because they want to work them cheap
You're
enough.
catching on.
Yes.
Exactly.
And you
Okay,
know,
so I
and-
mean, I always tell this to my husband, why they don't let them work and pay for their own food when they're working in prison, because, cost a lot of money. Why they don't come assist them and keep them busy and feel good about themselves that they're working instead of sitting in a cell all day. So they're being productive. But now I'm understanding is that, well, no, they're being not productive here. They're being productive and they're being used for being cheap. And some people might say, okay, so what? They own us something. But this is what I'm catching on. This is so good. Sorry, I wish we had more time. But what happened here is that, okay, we're using this, we let them work, but then what happened when they come out?
Right. And so to me, as these companies are utilizing inmate labor or buying products that were produced by inmates, why cannot a certain percentage be hired upon their release? That would take so much of a tax burden off of our society if these corporations would make that commitment and try to put back in some of what they profit off of.
Why they want to put that commitment if they can let them go back and let them work for cheap? I mean,
Exactly.
It
Well,
doesn't
if
make
you look
sense.
at the history of our country, from the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery, but there's a clause in there that says, and we cannot enslave people in this country, except if it's for punishment if they've been duly convicted.
Exactly.
So what we need to understand in this country is we have slavery, and those slaves are in prison, and they these corporations are profiting off
Again,
of it.
it's okay if they're being used in the prison to teach them when they come out that they could have a job.
But they're not.
But the
But they're
motivation
not.
is to
that's
make
where
more
it sto-
profits.
Yeah, that's what it stops. Where okay, you want them to put them to work and not pay them enough money. I can understand that, but if it's going to help them when they come out,
It's not.
to get a job, that's worth it for me.
Exactly.
Because I could say,
mean, that would
okay,
be ideal.
You shouldn't get paid too much. You paid your dues, and that's fine. But wow, okay.
I'm glad you said that you paid your dues, because that's actually a great segue into our next topic, which is the solutions. And for me, once you've finished your sentence, there is no finish. There is no finish line. You're consistently punished for the rest of your life. You are systematically locked out of voting. You're locked out of owning a gun. You're locked out of having your driver's license, housing, education. In some states, you don't even qualify for public assistance to get assistance for food stamps.
So some people are gonna say, yeah, they did wrong and they deserve this. But on the other hand, when they come back to the society, what happened? I mean, how they are going to improve their life so they don't go back to the same system and take our money to be in the prison. So that's what we were gonna find solution from you guys, the experts here. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the solution. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to that too. So we will be right back.
Thank you for calling Denim Revival.
Hate to say goodbye to your favorite jeans? Well, now you don't have to, because Denim Revival is here for you. Mail us your jeans and our professionals will fix it right up. We offer you all kinds of alteration services, including invisible repairs, let-outs, taperings, and original hemming, or even have your own custom-made jeans. Quoted the best denim repair shop by GQ, Vogue Magazine, and LA Times. Denim Revival, your search for alteration and repair ends here.
And to you it ain't pretty little thing. Howdy, your baby.
Welcome back. We are talking about how to know if your child will end up in a pipeline. And we're having great conversation. I'm getting educated. I never thought I'm going to be involved with this conversation as deep as I am. And but I believe I'm speaking for some people here. They're surprised like me. You know, even though I knew why you were coming here, but I'm getting more surprised at what you're sharing with me. Because I thought sometimes, okay, you did wrong, you need to go to jail. But not when you're, first of all, when you're a child, you did wrong, and then you end up being with the people who's maybe killing somebody. That's wrong. And then you were talking about inmate who's working in the prison, but then when they come out, they don't give them a job, and therefore they're coming back to prison, and they pay them very little money so we could use them as slave.
If the same companies
Yeah.
that hired them while they were in, after they got out, they would have more self-worth, more self-esteem, more sense of purpose, probably less likely to reoffend because they had some sort of responsibility and felt like they were,
And
you
we
know,
would have
a
better
citizen.
society.
And then we'd
exactly.
have another individual paying taxes and
Yeah.
being a productive part of
Productive.
our community.
Right, but that's not the goal. I've never heard of a prison being empty or having to close because they could not fill the beds.
That's a good one. Yeah, okay.
And so the goal is really to create that revolving door that brings them back. Some of the things that I witnessed as an inmate in the Wisconsin prison system is that inmates are often released and they're on psychotropic drugs. And so they aren't weaned off, and so they don't have insurance upon their release. How do they cope? Because now your brain is actually operating at a deficiency. So and so now how do they feed that need, this craving that the brain has to activate the serotonin and the dopamine and all of that, right?
So then they're going through withdrawal. from all of the psychotropic medications that they're on because they're not carrying around the prescription.
So
that they
in
got.
prison, they're taking medication?
They're forced to take
They're
it.
forced to, and if they don't, then they get in more trouble, do more time, and then they can even wind up in this country, even in 2017, going on 2018, solitary confinement
Yes.
as a punishment.
And who pays for their medication?
The taxes that we pay,
Yeah.
we're paying for it.
And
You.
their
You're
exorbitant
paying for it.
costs, so the pharmaceutical companies profit from it. The government pays the high cost
Yes.
for these prescriptions that the pharmaceutical companies profit from.
Okay, we got the problems here. We had 3 segments, I believe, whatever it was. I'm so glad we're talking about it. Let's talk about the solution. What is the solution?
Well, in 2016, President Obama signed an administrative order to stop or start eliminating private for-profit federal correctional facilities. And the reason why the Department of Justice and President Obama did this is there was several studies showing that inmates in private institutions, correctional institution, actually got worse care, less treatment. The food was insufficient. Some of the food sometimes it was reported maggots were in the food.
Yes.
No rehabilitative services. Maybe they provide employment services, but what about drug treatment, therapeutic services, medical treatment? It was very subservient, and it was determined to be even more costly.
So let me be the other person from the other side. Why should I care? That's some people gonna say that. So I want you to answer that.
Again, it was determined to be more costly. So they got less treatment, worse care. They were treated like slaves, and it was more costly. And who was profiting? The corporations. And so President Obama put in this order to say, no, we are going to reduce the amount of private correctional facilities that they should be government run. Unfortunately, in February of 2017, President Trump has rescinded that order. And so the reduction of federal private institution has been eliminated under the Trump administration. So in my opinion, the way that we need to have state-run state employees, correctional facilities that provide low-cost services that make the best value for the taxpayers' money.
I agree with that.
And they could be overseen.
Yeah, and I also think that too, the solution is just really allowing our families to heal and rebuild, giving them services. When somebody comes home from prison, that's traumatizing. That family unit has been destroyed, yes, for everyone. And for the community, if I can't then go get a job, if I cannot get food stamps so that I'm allowed to eat, what does that do to me? What choices do I have left but to go back out and to commit more crimes? And so for me, these companies that are profiting off of inmate labor, they have a responsibility to our country to say, I've made a profit off of this, I'm going to take a chance. They now should take a risk and should hire some of the inmates that they have already trained to do the job, which in the long run is going to save them dollars. They have a readily trained workforce.
So, but the other side of the coin, they say that why should I care for a person went to prison who came to my home, who stole from me, or who did something wrong? But again, the flip side is if we don't, we're going to create more of that because the person who's coming out is going to come back to your home and steal again because they don't have any other solution.
Well, the people in prison, they're, for the most part, they're going to be released to the community. So it behooves us as a society
We need
to help them to become a productive citizens, so they are taxpayers, that they're no longer burglarizing homes and victimizing people.
We have over 1 million people that are due to be released in the next couple of years that are returning home from prison. These are returning citizens. We can't just keep treating them like they're less than and then expect them to be productive. These are our cousins, our nieces, our nephews, our sons, our daughters, our neighbors. You have to live in the same neighborhoods that these people are being released to. So we need to wrap them in services that are truly going to be productive and move them forward.
And truly educate them on the facts. Like
Yes.
the deep, real facts of what's going on. Like, do parents really understand? I mean, how many times was I in family court and you know, the parents, regardless of their socioeconomic background, they could have been judges, lawyers, attorneys, you know, everyone. There wasn't anyone on any level that didn't have someone locked up. Their son, their daughter, their cousins.
Somebody.
Someone.
in
So
their life,
socioeconomic had nothing to do with it. And just educating them, because they'd be like, what do I do now? You know, I don't know, what do I do? So how do you educate them? And that's one of my courses on You Will Change the World is Juvenile Justice Secrets. What do I do next?
So where they should go to get that? It's a free lessons, right?
It's a free course. It's on You Will Change the World, and it's called Juvenile Justice Secrets, and it's basically to educate teachers, lawyers, psychologists, parents, children even. What's going to happen? What are your rights? What's going to happen while you're in there? What's going to happen with your school, your education, your medication, your mental health diagnosis if you didn't have one? And just the whole, it walks you basically through the entire system and what to expect and how to help you.
You know, I did want to say that, you know, we were talking about solutions, and I just want to say that it's so important for all of us to be educated on this problem. And if you're passionate about it, if what you've heard today disturbs you about what's going on in our country, you need to educate yourself on your representatives in Congress and in your state governments, and vote.
Vote.
Absolutely,
It's the
it
bottom
is
line.
so important that every one of us has a civic duty to vote, to become educated, and vote for politicians that represent your position.
Know who you're voting for, what they represent, and how they forecast how they're going to be making a difference.
But also forgiveness. We hold inmates to this impossible standard that they're never going to jaywalk, that they're never going to walk into a liquor store and buy a bottle of alcohol. These are standards that are impossible to meet. There needs to be some forgiveness so that once your sentence is done, it is truly done. And that you still don't feel like you owe society this huge debt that you could never repay.
And then what's gonna do for anyone? Really, what's gonna do? It's gonna just create more problems. So I wish we have more time to discuss more of the subject, but I'm sure we will be. We're discussing to have maybe Dr. Finnick to have her own show on akexpertstv.com and to bring more light to the justice system, to all justice, right? And all kind of information that people are hungry to learn about. Like today, thank you so much for inviting both of this wonderful lady.
It's my honor.
Well,
Thank you for
thank you so much.
being
It's been a
here.
pleasure.
Yes, and it's been amazing, educational. To me, I didn't think I was going to be as deep as I was on this one. Really, you opened not just my eyes, my heart as well, because we need to look after the next generation, what we're leaving behind us. So I really, from bottom of my heart, I thank you for all of the things that you guys do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add too, if people have follow-up questions for me, they can also visit my website, www.change.me.com. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about incarceration or what your families may be experiencing, or direct you to people like these two wonderful ladies that could answer your questions.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I look forward to having you again, and maybe we will have a show very soon here. We're working on that. I thank you so much for being with us. I hope you enjoyed this information. It's very powerful. I wish you a Happy New Year, Merry Christmas again, Happy Holidays, and please visit us on akexpertstv.com to watch more segments and episodes about subjects that you might like to learn. Thank you, and until next time, stay focused on your purpose.